Blur is how emotions can cause a once bright, clear eyes to see. We become consumed in our own created world that we lose track of reality, skipping signs, skipping signals just so we can live our wildest fantasies. But eventually, we get paid our resultant yet unwanted currency. The very people, the very ones who were the reasons for our heart-skipping, heart-beating ecstasy, become the very reason for our heart-wrenching, heart-breaking travesty. This is Ayeyi, and you are welcome to the third episode of Chapters of Love. Chapters of Love, living through the emotions, verse by verse. Right, so over the last two episodes, we've looked at the undying and persevering love of Adam and Eve, and also how to wait on love using the story of Jacob and Rahel. So if you haven't watched any of those videos, just spend a few minutes going to watch it, and then you can come right back into this video. But if you have, then here we go. So this week's episode is entitled Recipe for Disaster. Yes, you heard it right. Recipe for disaster. Most of the times in relationships, you see red flags here and there, sometimes even at the very beginning. But we ignore them thinking that things will improve as time goes on. We think that we can find a way to make things work. But it gets worse with time and eventually leads to our downfall. So today we'll be looking at the things that we shouldn't do in relationships, the things that when we see we should realize it early and quit as soon as possible. We will do this using the story of no other than Samson. Yes, Samson the hard guy. If he was a Game of Thrones character, his appellation might have been Samson the Nazarite, the first of his kind, father of bones, slayer of lions, slayer of men, you name it. I mean, just to give you the impression he was strong. In some circles, the strongest man who had ever lived. But in all his battles, in all his fights, he came across one that defeated him time and time again, and it was the matters of the heart. He had so many signals, so many ways that you could have realized that the step he was taking, the path he was moving was wrong. But he ignored and eventually led to his downfall. We study his story on today's episode of Chapters of Love. Now, for the purpose of this episode, our story would only be limited to the relationship between Samson and Delilah, which can be found in the book of Judges chapter 16. The story starts with we knowing how Samson gets into an entanglement with Delilah, a woman affiliated to the Philistines. Now, it should be noted that the Philistines were a group of people who were in constant enmity with Israel because of how close they were. And so they didn't see eye to eye, and also for the fact that they were pagans. Relationship or marriages with them were prohibited both by the Israelites and by God. And Samson, who was their judge, their leader, their commander-in-chief, demonstrated a spectacular way of leading by example by getting entangled with a woman affiliated with them. And the Philistines were also not stupid. When they realized that Samson had gone close to a woman related to them, they come to her offering her 1,100 pieces of silver in exchange for the knowledge of why Samson was so strong and how they could finally overpower him. So Delilah goes to Samson and asks him, Samson, why are you so strong and how can you be overpowered? In an attempt to satisfy the woman, tells her that if he was to be tied by fresh bowstrings which are wet, then he would be like any other man. And the woman actually goes on to try this with the Philistines waiting in another room. It fails because that was not what was Samson's strength. And so Delilah comes back for the second time and says that, you say you love me, then why can't you tell me what makes you weak? Samson says, alright, if I was to be tied by ropes which have never been used on anything, then I will be as weak as anyone else. Delilah once again asks for ropes to tie Samson up and tells Samson that, Samson, behold, the Philistines are upon you. Samson once again snaps the ropes apart like they were just thread on him. And Delilah goes for the third time saying that, Samson, you claim you love me, you claim I'm the woman of your dreams, so why can't you tell me what makes you so strong? Samson goes like, okay. And for the third time, I don't know why Samson didn't realize this or didn't see that there was something fishy about Delilah's conduct. But he goes on to tell her that if the 7 braids on his hair are tied to a loom with a pin, then he will be weak as any mortal and then can be overpowered. Delilah puts Samson's assertion into test and once again says that, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. Samson breaks free again. This made Delilah fed up because she also wanted the money and Samson had been toying with her for 3 times. And so she just shifts the nagging, the pressurizing, the torturing and everything on Samson to another level. She does it day after day after day until finally Samson can't take it anymore and then spills the beans that, well, he's a Nazarite and being a Nazarite means that no razor had ever touched his hair and that the day his hair is shaved up, he would be as weak and normal as any mortal. The Bible tells us that the manner and the passion to which Samson attached the confession made Delilah so convinced that it was indeed the truth, and so caused the Philistines to come one more time and bring in their money along with it, that indeed she had finally discovered the source of Samson's strength. So she causes Samson to fall asleep on her lap and gestures to one of the Philistines she had invited into the room to cut his hair off. Samson, immediately after his hair has been cut off, begins to grow weak, and Delilah tells him that, Samson, behold, the Philistines are upon you. In Samson's mind, he thinks he's still strong, he thinks he's still the most powerful man ever, but then he didn't know that the power, the glory, and in fact God himself had left him, and so he's overpowered, has his eyes gouged out, and taken to a Philistine prison. The story goes on to tell us that the Philistines officials, upon capturing Samson, threw a feast in honor of their god Dagon for finally putting Samson under their feet. The feast was so big that the room was filled, and even the roof had 3,000 men and women all taking part in the feast. And then out of joy, out of excitement, they asked for Samson's presence as a form of entertainment. So after a period of teasing and mockery, they sent Samson to the pillars of the place for them to continue their feast. Now, the Bible doesn't exactly state how long Samson was there, but it goes on to say that at that moment, Samson's hair had begun to grow. And so, in the midst of all the joy the Philistines were having, Samson saw it as an opportunity to finally have a revenge over them. So he prays to God, tells God that he should grant him one final strength, and then if possible even die with the Philistines. And so by the help of the guide who brought him to the place, he positions his hands on either side of the pillars, and then with one final push, one final exertion of energy, he collapses the building, and he dies with all the Philistines inside, all those on the roof. In fact, the building collapses on all of them. And the Bible goes on to tell us that in that single moment, Samson killed more people than he ever did throughout his lifetime. Such a tragic, such a sad ending to a man with so much potential, a man with so much power, a man with so much physique. But he made a mistake that a strong and experienced warrior like him shouldn't have made. Ignored all the signs, ignored all the warnings, and fell for his enemies. This is the end of our story, and as always, we'll be looking at it into more details. Now, I know the story of Samson gives a lot of Hercules, god of Egypt kind of vibe. For those of you who are more into movies, you would understand what I'm saying. But then trust me, it has a lot to do with relationships of modern times. With the first one being what I would term as professional relationships. There are those relationships where people go into it because both of them, and I mean both of them, both the man and the woman, go into it purely because the relationship has something to give other than love, of course. And so the guy probably has in his mind that, well, I'm with you because I basically just want a companion close by. And the lady also goes like, well, I'm also with you because I can't afford the rent, so I'm just staying with you. But if I have something better, or if I'm able to find my feet, that relationship ends. And it was just what happened between Samson and Delilah. Now, the earlier books will let you know that Samson was a serial womanizer. He had been in a failed marriage, he had been in prostitutes, all that happening before he met Delilah. So it had probably been that when he met Delilah, the only thing he had in mind was just to have a piece of her like all the other women, and then move on to someone else. And with Delilah, as we know, she was there for the money. She was there because she wanted to know Samson's source of strength. And so once she had that relationship would have ended. And this is exactly what happens. Once she finds out Samson's strength, she leaves him, she abandons him, she betrays him, and goes in for the money. And so that is what happens. That is what we fail to forget, that in what I call professional relationships, when the contract or the clause of termination reaches, the other doesn't think about the emotional state, how bad the other person will be affected by the break. They just move because that was what they were there for. And this happens a lot in our times, where people are there because of the cars, people are there because of the money, and then once that thing stops, the relationship stops. I don't care if you're going to cry yourself to bed. I don't even care in Samson's case if your eyes are going to be plucked out. I don't care. All I was there for was the money, and once I have it, or once I have achieved it. And like I said, it's a professional relationship, so you can't expect to have emotions, you can't expect to have people considering the consequences of whatever action they take, because every action they take, every move they make is solely to benefit them and them alone. And so if the contract ends, or if they get another job that is giving them a bigger offer, something bigger than what you are giving, they leave you. It's sad, it's tragic, but the strongest man ever in the world fell to this plot, and he couldn't survive. Now to the second way it relates to relationships of modern times. You could say that today I'm in a bit of a business kind of feeling, I'm a business kind of mood, because the second point also has a bit of business related to it. Now, as I said earlier on, Samson was a serial womanizer. He was someone who loved to be with women. But this instance is a very clear example of the playboy falling mercilessly in love with a girl he was just probably trying to just hit and run. And by getting involved with Delilah, Samson develops what I would call the service provider-client relationship. This is the kind of relationship where there is always someone demanding and there is always someone having to meet that demand. These relationships do not necessarily have a mutual benefit. It's just one person constantly demanding, one person constantly asking for this. I want this, I want that. You're not giving me more of this, you're not giving me more of that. Well, this is not enough. I expect better. I want this, I want that. It is all want, because that is what customers want. That is what customers do. They come, they want something, you give it to them, they are satisfied. You don't give it to them, they complain. And then with customers, as they say, the customer is always right. So the customer can throw tantrums at you, the customer can do anything, and then you just have to make do with it. You just have to accept it and move on with it. And you don't want to lose your customer, so whatever thing you would do to make the customer right, to make sure the customer is fully satisfied, you do it. And that is what happened to Samson. That is what is happening to some of us in our relationships, where we are being abused, we are being insulted, we are being tortured, so many things, but then we take it because we feel that person is our customer. We don't want to lose our customer. Maybe because our customer is giving us a few CDs, a few dollars, a few cars, a few phones, a few everything. So, well, he's always right because he's giving me this amount of money, because he's doing this for me. Well, technically he's permitted to do one or two things to me, and I shouldn't complain because the customer is always right. But then as the customer is right, as the customer is taking a lot of things on credit without paying, as the customer is looting your shop, as the customer is insulting you, doing all those things, it is tarnishing your image. You are losing your self-respect, you are losing who you are losing yourself, and in Samson's case, you are losing your strength, and then you fall, and that business, which is yourself, that is your purpose, that business, which is who you are, fails, it drops, it destroys, and even if you are not careful, even if you are not fortunate like Samson's own, you die. And now to the lessons. The first lesson we learn from the Samson and Delilah story is that we shouldn't ignore the early warning signs. Most of us move into relationship in the early stages realizing a few things about our partners that ideally won't make our relationship work, or ideally are against everything we stand for. But like I said earlier, we stand by it, we think we can make things work, and so we don't leave. It could be that the person is a drug addict, it could be that the person is an abuser of women, it could be that the person is a thief, it could even be that the person is not the same faith as you. Like, one is a Christian, one is a Muslim, one is an Adventist, one is a Pentecostal, one is a whole lot, okay? Certain things that you yourself, you know very well that if you are to stay with this person, if you are to be with this person at the long run, when it becomes critical, the relationship may not survive. But then you just base it on hope, you just base it on sometimes even faith, when it happens to do with you having this different blood groups, different sickling statuses, and you base it on hope that, well, something will come out of it, something good might come out of it, and then you stay in that relationship. And if the person constantly abusing you, you take it one, you take it twice, you think you can cope with it, it continues on and on and on until finally the person does something tragic to you, and then you have permanent damages. If it's about your faith, you think that, well, he's a Muslim, he's a Christian. I know I'm coming into a lot of these personal issues, but then it has to be said that if he's a Muslim, he's a Christian, you think that, well, love can do it, or sometimes love alone is not enough. Sometimes loving each other alone is not enough, because even with the same faith, like I said, even if it's Christian, even the various denominations have a lot of beliefs, a lot of traditions, a lot of norms, rituals that they all don't agree to. So thinking that you can move past it, you can just throw it somewhere in the background and move on, and then finally when you want to settle down, bring it up, it wouldn't work that way. So you solve it. If you realize that no, early on you can't move on with this, you quit, you let it end, and then you have your life, and then you have yourself. You don't move into it so much that at the end of the day, when you are pulling away or when you are coming out of it, you leave more of yourself into that relationship that you can't even recognize yourself once you are finally out of it. The next thing we learn from this story is that often in relationships, it is important to look beyond the present good moments. So beyond the spending so much time together, beyond the going to places, traveling on weekends, beyond the everything romantic, lovey-dovey you guys share, what exactly is their intentions? What exactly is their plans for you? You should have some conversations like this, knowing what exactly your partners think of you, because to your surprise, you might think that the person has been with you for 3, 4, 5 years, so you think that the person actually wants to marry you or wants to settle down with you, but it may not be the case. It may be that they are there because of, let's say, something your family has, I don't know, something, even if it has to be with in an educational setting, maybe because you are just good at a course, you are just good at a program, and that the person wants to be with you, wants to be so close to you in order to benefit. So you can spark up conversations like, where do you see us? Where do you see yourself? Where do you see me? How do I fit in your plans, your future plans? And from their answers, how they react to these situations, we can really know whether the people in our lives are just there because of a few kisses, a few times together, a few hugs, a few times we share, a few dates out, a few weekends, or they are really there because they want to walk through our life journey with us. The third point to note is that even the strong can break in the wrong relationship. Most of us think that we are financially sound, spiritually sound, physically sound, so much mentoring, so much coaching into relationships that we are fit enough to have someone in our lives. And because of that, we don't really do due diligence when we are inviting people into our lives. And when these people come in, they mess up our finances, they mess up our spiritual life, they mess up our physical shape, they just drain us emotionally, physically, and they leave us so worse off than we were. So, yes, you are strong, yes, you are rich, yes, you are affluent, whatever thing it is, but then you should make sure that the people you are bringing in your life are, if not equally, better, or they can challenge you to improve yourself. And I'm not trying to say that have classes in when choosing partners, no, but all I'm trying to say is that set standards for yourself, because yes, it is, you are inviting someone into your life, and your life is important because you only live once. So you should be critical of who you are inviting in, so that all the years, all the times you have built yourself spiritually, built yourself physically, built yourself financially, is not ruined because of a few years, a few months with someone who is already having their issues, who is already not prepared, who didn't take as much importance to their life as you before they finally met you. So don't just leave things to chance that way. You are worth more than just having someone in your life who is just there for fun. So please, before we bring people in our lives, let's set things right, okay? Because when you don't do that, they ruin you, they hurt you, they break your heart, and they leave. The last lesson, which offers a bit of hope, is that there is still life after a heartbreak. Samson lost his strength, Samson lost his glory, his leadership, his authority over his people, that fear factor around him. He lost all that. But what did he do after the breakup? What did he do after he lost all that? He killed more Philistines in a single day than he had ever done in his lifetime. Now, Samson was a warrior by profession, you would say, so that would have been his field. But then maybe it's a job you are doing. Maybe you are an artist, maybe you are a musician, maybe you are a banker, whatever thing you are doing. If a heartbreak comes in your way, it shouldn't be the reason why you stop. It actually should be the reason why you decide that, no, I want this person to see that I am not all useless, I am not all used up, or the person might think that, yes, he or she has taken so much out of me that life has nothing to offer me anymore. It is that point where you have to re-find yourself, rediscover yourself. In that moment you are down, in that moment you are weeping, in that moment, like something, you cry till your eyes are out. Beyond the grief, beyond the feeling that you have been used, beyond the feeling that you've been abused, you can still make something out of your life when you decide to. Yes, sometimes when we reflect on the commitment, the devotion, the sacrifices, even the resources we have put in relationships and it has ended, you sometimes feel like it's a wasted period of time. If a relationship didn't give you what you wanted, at least it taught you what you didn't want. All that pain, all that frustration, we can channel it in a good way to improve ourselves, so that the next person that comes into our life don't take an advantage of us. They realize our worth. They realize that we have standards, we have certain goals, we have certain visions we want to achieve with ourselves, and they will respect us for that. They will value us for that. Let us forge new memories, the possibilities, or what the new memories, what the future has far outweighs what the past has given us. So I leave you with this: no matter how pure water is, it loses its purity even if a pinch of sand is dropped into it. So don't just open up your world to them because of a few smiles they've made at you. Don't just give yourself out because of a few moments when they have made you feel good. Because remember that although it may take just the blow of the air to make the water impure with the sand, it will require a whole long process before that water once again becomes purified. Thanks for watching. It's been Ayeye on Chapters of Love. If you liked it and you have any comments, contributions, questions, you can leave it in the comment section. And also please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And when you subscribe, don't forget to hit the notification button so you get the videos immediately after we release them. Once again, it's been Chapters of Love, where we live through the emotions verse by verse. We out. Chapters of Love, living through the emotions verse by verse.